Biomed Nexus, daily updates, your essential biotech, medtech, and pharma recap. No noise, just what matters. TLDR Pfizer, PFE, reported a Phase 3 setback for sigvotatug vedotin, a Seagen-sourced antibody-drug conjugate that had been among the more closely watched assets from the 43B acquisition. The pharma letter described it as one of the more closely watched assets from the deal. The Ebola outbreak in the DRC has now reached 1,003 confirmed cases and 254 deaths, according to RTT News, citing the Ministry of Health. The WHO declared this outbreak a PHEIC on May 17th. Case counts have quadrupled in 5 weeks. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services launched a clinical trials reform initiative aimed at accelerating drug development, reducing regulatory burden, and reinforcing the country's position in global biomedical research, according to the pharma letter. Singapore's K2 Therapeutics signed 2 preclinical T-cell engager deals with Chinese biotech Antengene in a package worth almost $2 billion if both programs advance, according to the pharma letter. Definium Therapeutics reported positive Phase 3 results for DT120, an orally disintegrating tablet for major depressive disorder, sending shares up 52%. Executive takeaway Pfizer paid $43 for Seagen in 2023 to become an ADC powerhouse. The deal brought in Padcev, bladder cancer, now generating strong revenue with the EV304 data we covered at ASCO, Adcetris, lymphoma, and Tivdak, cervical cancer. But the pipeline assets from Seagen have been a mixed bag. Sigvotatug vedotin was positioned to expand Pfizer's ADC franchise into new tumor types. A Phase 3 miss narrows that expansion and raises questions about which remaining Seagen pipeline assets will deliver returns on the 43B investment. This doesn't invalidate the Seagen deal because Padcev alone may justify the price, but it adds to the pressure on Pfizer to show that the acquisition was about more than one drug. Meanwhile, the Ebola numbers are alarming. When we first covered the WHO FIC declaration on May 19th, there were 8 confirmed cases and 246 suspected cases. 5 weeks later, 103 confirmed cases and 254 deaths. The Bundibugyo strain still has no approved vaccines or treatments. Moderna's mRNA vaccine partnership and the J&J Bavarian Nordic cross-protection question remain the 2 most important countermeasure tracks. Read full analysis, what to watch. BIO International through June 25. Final day of the convention tomorrow. Deal announcements and partnering updates expected. Ebola. Response. Whether Moderna or any other manufacturer has advanced a Bundibugyo-specific candidate into clinical testing. Case growth from 8 to 1,003 in 5 weeks demands faster countermeasure development. HHS trials reform, whether the initiative produces concrete regulatory changes or remains aspirational. The FDA is still operating without a permanent commissioner. Medicare GLP-1 bridge, July 1st, 7 days out. Oncology Pfizer's Seagen ADC sigvotatug vedotin. Misses. Phase 3. PFE Pfizer reported a Phase 3 setback for sigvotatug vedotin, a Seagen-sourced antibody-drug conjugate, according to the pharma letter. The drug had been among the more closely watched pipeline assets from Pfizer's 43B Seagen acquisition in 2023. The failure adds to a pattern, while Padcev, the crown jewel of the deal, continues to perform strongly, 55.8% PCR in bladder cancer at ASCO, growing first-line data. Other Seagen assets have had a rougher path. Pfizer earlier this year culled a separate Trillium Therapeutics asset from its pipeline. The question for investors is whether Padcev's commercial trajectory alone can justify the acquisition premium, or whether the pipeline breadth that Seagen promised is not materializing as expected. Global Health Congo Ebola crosses 1,000. Confirmed cases. The Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo has reached 1,003 confirmed cases and 254 deaths, according to RTT News, citing the DRC Ministry of Health. When the WHO declared this outbreak a PHEIC on May 17th, there were 8 confirmed cases and 246 suspected cases. The Bundibugyo strain has no approved vaccines or therapeutics. Case growth has been exponential, with the outbreak now spread across multiple health zones in eastern DRC's Ituri province and confirmed cases in Uganda. Moderna partnered with a global vaccine foundation in early June to develop a Bundibugyo-specific mRNA vaccine. No timeline for clinical testing has been announced. Policy HHS launches Clinical Trials Reform Initiative. The Department of Health and Human Services launched a Clinical Trials Reform Initiative on June 23 aimed at accelerating drug development, reducing unnecessary regulatory burden, and reinforcing the country's position in global biomedical research, according to the Pharma letter. The initiative comes as the FDA operates without a permanent commissioner, CDER director, or CBER director. Whether the initiative can produce meaningful change under acting leadership remains an open question. The FDA's expedited IND pathway, proposed by former Commissioner Macquarie, and the real-time clinical trial pilot, comment period, closed May 29th, are related efforts that also await permanent leadership to advance. Deals K2 Therapeutics and Antengeni sign. 2B TCE package. Singapore-based K2 Therapeutics signed 2 preclinical T-cell engager deals with Chinese biotech Antengeni in a transaction package worth almost $2 billion if both programs advance, according to the Pharma letter. The deal adds to the growing TCE landscape alongside Jazz, Abcellera, 780 nm per program, Cytomex, Regeneron, 4B, and the ASCO bispecific antibody data. The Asia-to-Asia licensing structure, Singapore to China, is a new dynamic in the global deal flow that has been dominated by West to China transactions. CNS Definium, Phase 3, hit in depression, sends shares up 52%. Definium Therapeutics reported positive top-line results from the first of 2 pivotal Phase 3 studies of DT120, an orally disintegrating tablet for major depressive disorder, sending shares up 52%, according to the Pharma letter. MDD is the largest market in CNS therapeutics and has seen limited new mechanism approvals in recent years. If the second pivotal study confirms the results, Definium would have a differentiated dosage form, orally disintegrating, no water needed, in a market where patient compliance is a persistent challenge. Coming up, tomorrow, Bio International Final Day, San Diego, July, FERT Medicare. GLP-1 Bridge Program launches 7 days. July 31st, Section 232 pharma tariffs effective for large companies. Imminent, Revolution Medicines CNPV NDA filing. Imminent, Lilly Foundeo T2D filing under CNPV Read, Full Analysis Biomed, Nexus. Pro Institutional Intelligence Brief. The Seagen scorecard. Pfizer paid $43 billion for Seagen in December 2023. Here is where the key assets stand. Performing, Padcev, Enfortumab Vedotin, is the deal's anchor. Bladder cancer revenue is growing. The EV304 ASCO data, 55.8% PCR with Keytruda, expand the franchise into the perioperative setting. Pfizer has built Padcev into a partnership with Merck's Keytruda that could define bladder cancer treatment for the next decade. Mixed. Adcetris, brentuximab vedotin, continues to generate revenue in lymphoma, but is a mature asset facing biosimilar timelines. Tivdak, tisotumab vedotin, has a narrow cervical cancer indication. Setbacks. Sigvotatug vedotin missed Phase 3. Trillium assets were culled from the pipeline earlier this year. The bull case, Padcev alone is on track to become a 5B to 10B franchise. At that scale, the 43B price is justifiable even without major pipeline contributions. The bear case, Pfizer needed the pipeline breadth to justify paying a 33% premium. Each pipeline failure narrows the return on investment. Ebola, The countermeasure. Timeline, the outbreak trajectory demands attention. May 17th, PHEIC declared. 8 confirmed cases, 246 suspected, 80 deaths. June 24th, today. 1,003 confirmed cases, 254 deaths. That is a 125x increase in confirmed cases in 38 days. The case fatality rate of approximately 25% is consistent with the historical Bundibugyo range, 25% to 40%, and is lower than Zaire Ebola, up to 90%, but the absolute death toll is climbing rapidly. The countermeasure tracks we are aware of. Moderna partnered with the Vaccine Foundation in early June. mRNA platform could potentially produce a Bundibugyo-specific construct within months, but no clinical testing timeline has been announced. INJ Bavarian Nordic. Zubdano, Mvabea, was designed for broad Ebola coverage. Whether it cross-protects against Bundibugyo is under investigation. Regeneron, Regan EB3, Inmazeb, was developed for Zaire Ebola. A Bundibugyo-specific antibody cocktail would take 6+ months to develop. The gap between outbreak trajectory and countermeasure development is widening, not narrowing. TCE landscape, growing fast. The T-cell engager space is attracting deep capital commitments. Deal value. Stage Cytom XR Regeneron up, 2-4B preclinical, Probody, plus VeloTBI, Jazz, Abcellera, 56 plus, 792 medals per program, 3 programs. Preclinical K2 antigen up to 2B, 2 programs. Preclinical UCB Chicandid 2.2B, Tizutamig, BCMA CD3. Early clinical TCEs have proven commercially in hematology. J&J's Tecvayli, Roche's Lunsumio, Amgen's Blincy2, but have struggled in solid tumors. The preclinical investments from Cytomex, Jazz, and K2 represent bets that next-generation TCE designs, conditionally activated by specific tumor microenvironment targeted, can overcome the solid tumor limitations. Visit the Pro Hub Read. Full article. Is your company listed in the Biomed Nexus directory? 2,104 companies across 14 categories. Claim or upgrade your listing. Sponsorship slots for 2026 are limited. See packages and pricing. New Biomed Nexus signals. Weekly sales intelligence for life sciences BD teams. Learn more